right, Nurse Deb. So how many of Ascend conferences have you been to?
Oh my gosh, 6, 7, all but the first one.
Okay, so however many there have been minus one. And obviously you started your company on the foundation that the normal way isn't working. So what I normally find out is that people who make their lives harder for themselves to do the right things do so because of a purpose. What would you say is your driving purpose, your why, your motivation?
Yeah, these two right here. My mom, my granddaughter. I mean, we got to take care of these folks, right? We got to leave it better for the next generation than what we've got it, because what we got right now ain't working.
So I love this because you're going through something right now that's a personal thing, and on stage you did life or death. Give me your elevator pitch on the life or death part of that conversation.
Beyond American healthcare stinks.
Beyond
right?
that, yeah. Expand on that.
Well, the problem is we don't realize the harm that's being done to people every single day by accessing the American healthcare system. So if you remember, I started out that by saying there's one thing and one thing only that people need to worry about when they access the healthcare system, and that is staying alive, right? The whole Bee Gees clip. You know, we kind of chuckle about it, but it's true, right? 30% of healthcare spending is fraud, waste, and abuse. 30% of cancer is misdiagnosed. How are we not paying attention to this in American healthcare? We've got people that are deciding, do I take my blood pressure medicine or do I keep the heat on in my house? In America, in our backyard. That's ridiculous. How can that be going on?
So, thoughts. Well, give me one live example. You have a million. Give me one live example because I want to go from that to a couple other conversations.
One live example. You want a difficult one or a simple one?
An everyday one that somebody watching this every day could appreciate.
Your kid blows out their knee playing basketball, and of course you're convinced they're going to go to the NBA, so you want to go to the NBA team sports med doctor who's not equipped to handle pediatrics, and you want to go right now for a CT scan that, oh, by the way, nobody tells you, has the same radiation exposure as hundreds of plain film x-rays and is going to cost you thousands of dollars when you could rest, ice, elevate, compress, do an x-ray, give it a few weeks, and then when a CT scan becomes appropriate, go to an independent imaging center to get that for a couple of $100, not a couple $1,000 at the hospital. And go to somebody who understands the growth plates that are in the bones. Don't go to an adult orthopedist.
And that's something that happens every single day. So I think of this, obviously you are a speaker nationally, you have done hundreds and hundreds of these. If you said one thing that's like, hey, this works for everybody, what's the this works for everybody?
Having a nurse to handhold them through the two toughest decisions in their life. What health care am I going to get? When am I going to go to get it? Where am I going to go to get it? And oh my God, how am I going to afford this?
So if that sounds so simple, right? I think of like myself, I've blown out my knee. I think about how I made decisions. I've had parents who have gone through major complications and how they've gone about it. So if it's such a no-brainer, the data's there, everything is there, and people aren't doing it, then I gotta say, there's an employer standing right here. What's the conversation with that employer?
You've got to do something. You've got to do something. You've got to understand the system is broken when it comes to your benefit, right? Our friend David says the system's not broken. It's working exactly the way it was designed. It just was not designed for the best interest of the patient it's treating or the employer who's paying for their health care. Until you realize that you are stuck in that and get out of this Stockholm syndrome that you're experiencing with the bukas, you're going to be killing people. Every day you are killing your employees and their dependents by giving them access to health care that is hurting them.
Awesome. Well, I obviously have a heart for nurses. I know you're going through a lot with your family, so thank you so much for everything that you do and what you advocate for this business.
We love you too, Note.